Sunday night edition of the Crash the Pond podcast. Folks, we have got a pretty action-packed episode for you this week. We've got a lot to talk about. The Ducks played tonight, so it's also a post-game edition. We're going to talk about the game that we all just watched, the Ducks beating the Colorado Avalanche 3-1 on home ice. So a lot to get into, Jake. I hope you're hydrated. I hope that you're everything they need to do to be prepared, because there's a lot here.
I've got my water bottle here. I'm ready to go. I was 0 for 3 on my predictions. Our good friend, good friend of the podcast, patron, that guy Bobski, is having a little prediction challenge for me in our Discord chat of predicting the score, who's gonna win, and one other thing. And however many I get right is how many gifted subs he's gonna give out that night. So that's kind of where we're going with this. And I was 0 for 3. I said it was going to be 3-2 on for the Avalanche as the final score. And his question was whether the Ducks would score on the power play. And I said yes. So 0 for 3 for me tonight on that. So not a great start for me, but you gotta go along. The Ducks ended up getting the win. It's going to be a good, fun podcast to talk about that. A little bit of a throwback to what we were used to doing way back when.
Yeah. Jake getting punished for being negative on the Ducks. Love to see that.
It came back to get me. It came back to bite me. The show could have benefited from gifted subs. The people out there could have benefited, but I didn't get it right. So there we go. But I should give a shout out to Varluna, who resubbed at tier 1 for the 25th month and added a comment. That was a game. And so thank you so much, Varluna, for tuning in. I know you've been listening to us. We've met up a bunch of times, so thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Well, do you want to just jump right in here? Let's cut to the chase. So
let's do it.
The Ducks take this one 3-1 against the Avalanche, and this was after the Ducks had I would say a pretty decent performance. Once again, losing in 3-on-3 overtime on Friday to the same Avalanche, and that one was coming off of a back-to-back for the Avs. And so tonight, the Avalanche with a day of rest. Were clearly a different beast, because in the first period, they were controlling the game pretty much from start to finish in the first period. The shot attempts there were 22-13 at 5-on-5, scoring chances 12-6. The Ducks getting a tiny edge in high danger chances, but it actually didn't matter that the Avs were controlling so well, because the Ducks would have the lead coming out of that period thanks to Jakob Silfverberg's early tally. He would score in the first minute of the game, 58 seconds in. A nice shot from him. And so kind of a period that was all over the place, but ultimately the Ducks came out on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, it started off well for the Ducks. I actually thought that they came out of the gates looking like the better team, and that's an issue that we'll probably get into when we get in some of the other games. But the Ducks had struggled so far this season with their starts. And right away, they got some good looks. They had 2 shots on goal to start, and then that was it for a long time. The Silfverberg goal happened, and then it kind of went flat from there. And the Avalanche really had a really big flurry of chances kind of right afterwards, kind of in the first 5-10 minutes of the game. And then they also the Ducks did a pretty good job of limiting their chances from then on. But the one thing that was noticeable in that first period, basically right away, was the amount of chances that McKinnon was getting. There was one shift where he ended up hitting the post, where he just basically shrugged off Derek Grant and was able to get himself a glorious chance and ends up hitting the post. And I think there was another post in that period that was hit. But this was the first moment when I fully realized that we were going to be getting the Derek Grant versus Nathan McKinnon matchup in this game due to Dallas Eakins wanting that matchup. And oh boy, we'll have things to say about that.
Yeah, we'll get into that topic. There's too many other things to discuss first, though. So the Ducks come out of that period up 1-0, and also one thing I should mention is that the Avalanche were just painting the posts tonight. A lot of opportunities where they managed to get open looks, or a shot goes through traffic, and Cale Makar rang one off the crossbar. So a little bit of luck never hurts anybody. Well, I guess if you're the Ducks in this case, it didn't hurt, but that's something that we should mention as well. And I would say that in the first period, the Ducks were really, after that initial tally by Silfverberg, they really, the Avalanche just completely took over, but things did stabilize just a bit as the period ended. It wasn't it wasn't one of those first periods that we've seen in other games where they just get completely blasted the entire way through. Despite those ugly numbers, when you look more at, the shot quality element of this, the Ducks were still outplayed, but it wasn't quite as dominant or quite as destructive as we've seen in other games. And this is a very low bar. I do want to point that out. This was still not a good first period for the Ducks by any means. When you're looking at just kind of the underlying, the way that they were playing, not just the scoreboard. So that's something to keep a note of, that maybe there is a little improvement, just a teeny bit of improvement going on there.
And now up on the screen actually is the expected goals in all situations per money puck. And so you can see kind of at the beginning of that period, the Ducks had the little bit of a burst at the beginning. Then the Avalanche had this really big flurry, and then it kind of flattened out from there. The Ducks had a couple good chances later on in the first period, two of them specifically that really helped out kind of get their chances up a little bit higher. This one came from Jakob Silfverberg's shot. That was a really good look near the end of the first period. And so they did a good job of keeping the Avalanche to the outside.
They did. And that is something that we'll get into about, I think that was a large part of their game plan, was just, and it's not the worst game plan either. Just, that they're the better team. That they have more skill. That they're so elite offensively. There are just things that you might have to be willing to give up. And that seems to be what they were willing to give up, is just puck possession on the outside. I still don't think it's a strategy that you can win with in the long term, but in a game like this, you got to do whatever you can against such a good offensive team. Now, in the second period, things would start to look a lot better for the Ducks when you're looking at the run of play. So in that period, as opposed to being, completely annihilated from a shot attempt perspective, they still didn't lead in that category, but only edged out by one shot attempt by the Avalanche at 5-on-5. So you could say that that's an improvement.
Yeah, I think a slight improvement for them.
Yeah, it was. And then I think that in the rest of that period, we saw that the Ducks there were still some tendencies there that they're going to have to work on, but the game felt like it slowed down a little bit, and particularly they actually managed to win the scoring chance battle 7-4, and from high danger locations actually had the edge 3-1. So kind of just mucking it up. It wasn't pretty by any means, but this is kind of, I think, going to be the blueprint for this team, because right now they're not really teaming with offensive talent, so they're going to have to win in ways that are just, well, especially when they're playing really good teams, contenders. They're just going to have to win in ways that aren't necessarily the prettiest.
Yeah, and I think the slightly frustrating thing on that is that I think if you look at some, maybe like the game prior to this one, where the Ducks, I think the Ducks played their best game and they were actually on the front foot. If the Ducks actually decide to play that way, they can actually hang with teams and generate chances. And it's frustrating to see them kind of sit back into this. And I get I get the logic behind it here, but it's just it's so beyond frustrating.
The Avalanche were also just better tonight, I think.
Yes. I think yes. Yeah, I think the fact that they weren't on the back-to-back backs really plays a big part. But I think that it's just frustrating to see them default to that. We saw this happen against Vegas in the second game of that series, and it seemed like this was kind of a repeat. And it seems like that's kind of what we're in for a bit with the Ducks, of when they end up getting the lead, they decide to just kind of sit on it. And I think that's somewhat frustrating for me as a fan to watch that type of hockey. I guess from my pure entertainment standpoint, I would rather see them push for that next goal.
Well, from an entertainment perspective, I think that you were definitely well served in that second, because Ryan Getzlaf and Ricard Raquel with a connection that was just highlight reel worthy. I mean, Ryan Getzlaf doing what he does best, finding his teammates before they're even really open. And you saw that synergy between Raquel, because it was kind of a give and go. He started seeing Getzlaf, they were kind of making that eye contact, and so he starts bolting towards an open spot or open space in the slot, and Getzlaf times his pass perfectly to where the puck arrives in that area right as Ricard Raquel gets there. So some good communication between those two, but also just the skill level to execute that by Getzlaf was phenomenal. I mean, that is his bread and butter. And then Ricard Raquel with a nice finish as well, his first goal of the season. So I think that one thing to really key in on here through two periods, that would be the only goal scored in the period, is that you have Silfverberg picking up his first goal of the year and Ricard Raquel in two consecutive periods. So that's an encouraging sign for the Ducks, because they can play better all they want. They can they can improve marginally here and there. But if their best players are not producing and are not really having the kind of process that's going to lead to long-term results, then it doesn't really matter. And so I think that that's a really encouraging sign as well for the Ducks that Silverberg and Raquel they were by far some of the Ducks' best players tonight.
Yes, definitely. And I think that it's good to see Rickard Rakell get off the scoring, or basically score his first goal of the season. Obviously, Ryan Getzlaf's pass really has a big part in that, and it's awesome to see that type of pass come from Getzlaf. It's something that he's kind of built his game off throughout all the years, and he still has that vision. And Rickard Rakell, he's been solid for the Ducks this year. He's been able to generate chances for himself and hasn't necessarily been able to put them in the back of the net. So it's good to be able to see that happen. Real quick, also want to jump in and say big shout out to Literate Gal. Sorry, I want to jump in with some Twitch stuff, but Literate Gal resubs for 28 months. And then we also had this big one, Shoegaze Dragon Georgie subbed at tier 1. They've subbed for 29 or 23 months and on a 9-month streak. And then also gave out 5 tier 1 subs, gifted 5 of them out. Olaf the Berserker also subbed. And then we also had Halo Ducks gifted out 5 tier 1 subs. So a lot of love going around. Science Cat now just gifted out 5 tier 1 subs. So a lot of gifted subs going all around right now. Thank you to everyone for doing that. Needed to give that a shout out.
Absolutely. And, people are in a good mood when the Ducks win, when the Ducks do good things, as it turns out, which is not, we didn't have much of a positive vibe to go off of last week with the way that things started for Anaheim and Vegas. So I'm glad that we have this win to talk about here.
Yes, definitely.
So any other notes you had on the second period before we jump into the third?
Not really any big ones. I actually think that this was the better period, or potentially the best period for the Ducks. I think the thing that we saw the most here was on the power play. I think they actually were able to get some of their better chances. I believe they had 1 or 2 power plays, and they were able to get those also off of some extended zone time. So even though they were getting outshot in this period, the good thing for the Ducks in this period that they were able to get some life in them, and they were able to get some really high quality chances. And this is kind of that type of game. I know this is going way back when, but one of the calling cards of people that defended Randy Carlyle was that even though they get outshot, they would get high quality looks as when they would get their shots. And so I think that that's kind of what we saw in this game and in this period specifically, was that even though the Ducks did get outshot, they did a good job of making sure those looks counted and made sure to get some high quality looks in the process. And I think that even though you'd like to see them get more shots, push a little bit more, we should give them the credit that they were getting good quality looks against that Colorado Avalanche, and basically they were able to score them, and they took advantage of that. And that's what we've been asking for this Ducks team, is to be able to get chances and because you'll put them in the back of the net. And they were able to do that, and they were able to score.
Yeah, and so moving on into the third period here, John Gibson had to be very good in this game, even when you consider some of the luck element and the posts that were definitely coming through for him and for the team as a whole. He was still so good, and particularly, this was after the Avalanche would tie or would get on the board and come within 1 with Mikko Rantanen just kind of left all alone in front of the net to collect a rebound and pot it on his backhand. You would see John Gibson make an incredible save going post to post on Nathan McKinnon. Now, looking at the replay, you can actually see that Yanni Hakanpää tipped it. So not only did he have to contend with a one-timer from one of the best players, maybe one of the 3 best players in the world, but also his own defenseman redirected it on its way into the net. So just a very impressive, acrobatic, athletic, but also technically sound save by John Gibson. And this is something that we'll get into as we talk about the other games that happened this week, but he is just a man on fire right now.
Yeah, he is just playing some of his best hockey. I made note of this on Twitter after the game, but he is the MVP of the Ducks right now. There's really no other way to put it. Without him, the Ducks would not be where they are.
It's not the shutdown line? You're not giving it to the shutdown line?
We'll get into that in a bit. But I was actually putting together my weekly ratings today, which everyone will go out tomorrow. And I am rating the reverse retro jerseys as part of that. But John Gibson, I think, is 4th in the league right now in GSAX. And part of that, I think, is due to the fact that he had a subpar first game. So if you were to take out that first game, he's been insane for this Ducks team and is basically the only reason they're in these games. And yes, the Ducks, like I said, they played well. They took their chances. They got them. But the reason why they're in that position at all to have this lead is John Gibson. And so I want to just give him, I mean, he deserves basically the MVP if you were to have an early season MVP right now. And if someone in the NHL covering it on the whole is not basically talking about him, that's because they're not paying attention.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the narrative that we saw developing after last year, that John Gibson that he's not that good, that he doesn't work on his craft, all these things that we've heard, it's clearly bogus because he had one down year after a couple of years of having to be a complete workhorse, and he struggled on a bad team. So it's not as if, he was really sinking his team anyway. All this to say that never made sense, and he very much looks like he's back to the goalie that we knew a couple of years ago. And I mean, this is what we talked about during the offseason, but he was one of those guys who could really benefit from that extended offseason just because of how his body, there's just been so much wear and tear with the injuries, with the high usage, and I think that right now he's just flourishing. Now, of course, you do want to see the Ducks go to Miller as often as they possibly can because as well as Gibson is playing, this schedule is so compact, and you still have to manage minutes. And I'm sure that they're aware of that. I mean, you saw Ryan Miller play this week, but he's been very good. And in that period, the Ducks predictably were a bit on their heels, and the Avalanche were pressing to tie the game up, and the things didn't necessarily go the Ducks' way in terms of the overall play. I mean, shot attempts were 15-6 at 5-on-5. Scoring chances were 8-3, but the Ducks managed to get the empty netter right as the Avalanche. You felt like the Avalanche were really coming on. Hampus Lindholm just sends one across all the way down the rink into the empty net. The Ducks get up 3-1, and that would pretty much ice it. So overall, I think it's a feel-good win for the Ducks against a very strong opponent.
Yes, it 100% is, and I think that one thing that I noticed was, for the most part, obviously the Ducks were sitting back. They were trying to clog up the neutral zone, do all that type of stuff. But the Getzlaf line, when they were out there, they were still pushing the play. And that's something that was really nice to see. And to be honest, I'm really happy with how that line, specifically Getzlaf and Raquel, you can throw whether it was Sonny Milano, whether it's Max Jones on that wing. It really doesn't matter. That line has had success, and Getzlaf and Raquel, when looking at the numbers, really were successful once they were put back together. And even though they weren't able to generate a bunch of goals in the past week, they were really successful, and that basically happened tonight also. 0.35 expected goals, 4.19 against, so they were better offensively than the rest of the lines. They weren't the best offensive line, but they were the best defensive line on the whole for the Ducks tonight. And that's something that they've kind of done, and so it's nice to be able to have them push the play and be able to not just sit back and defend.
Yeah, so let's highlight some good individual performances or just overall positives before we get into some of the critiques, because there are still, of course, it's us. There's going to be some things to point out.
There's going to be some stabs taken, but
you already talked about Getzlaf and Raquel, and I think that that's a great place to point to, because, like you said, regardless of whether it's been Max Jones or Sonny Milano, they've been good. Now, I do think that their ceiling as a line is a bit capped when it's not Sonny Milano and when it's Max Jones in there. What have you seen in Max Jones' game so far? I mean, we haven't really seen much of him, but in the short time that he's been up.
Yeah, I think the one thing for Max Jones that he's done so well is that he's kept it simple. And I think that's one of the things that he's done well, and what he's contributed to this line well is when they've had success in the offensive zone, it's because Max Jones is the first one in, and he understands that his ability to get into get on the forecheck is basically what he brings to that line. I mean, Rickard Raquel, Ryan Getzlaf, they're the skilled players. Max Jones doesn't necessarily have the talent and the skill that those two have, even though he was a first-round pick and was highly touted. He needs to go in there. He needs to get in on the forecheck, and he needs to basically use his body to get the puck. That's his job on that line, and that's what he needs to do. And so it's really important for him to do that, and he did that well. And I think that that's the element that he brings to that line, and that's so good. And I think it was the last game against the Avalanche, he was able to get in on the forecheck, and basically I think he set up a goal because of getting in and basically disrupting the play.
Well, he actually is the example when you hear Dallas Eakins talk about players that have structure, quote unquote structure, because he's a guy who comes in and just kind of keeps the chains moving. He's not a guy who maybe elevates the ceiling of the line. He's not going to come in and generate a ton of individual offense, but just generally seems to know where to be, understands the system. And I'm assuming that once Sonny Milano is healthy again, which we'll get into, that he'll be back on that line. But for now, they're getting by. And I mean, with Ryan Getzlaf and Rickard Rakell looking as good as they are, it might just not totally matter who's on that wing. Another performance that I think deserves some pointing out, I think that tonight and also just the last couple of games, Danton Heinen has looked solid next to Adam Henrique and Jakob Silfverberg. Nothing necessarily flashy, but I think that he's been good overall. Maybe you disagree on that.
No, I think he's been good, especially once they made that switch. I think that something just looked off when it was Rakell, Henrique, Silfverberg, and then what would it have been? It would have been Milano / Lundestrom, Getzlaf, and Heinen. And for whatever reason, even though Dallas Eakins said Heinen looked really good in camp next to Getzlaf, once the puck dropped on the season, I didn't see it. Didn't make sense. Didn't look good to me. And
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I disagree with that.
I think
that those two look good. It's just that there was a black hole on the other wing, and that's kind of an issue.
I think he's just looked a lot more comfortable next to Henrique and next to Silfverberg. And I think that my big issue is that line should be used more in a defensive role than they've been given so far. That's basically the best defensive line for the Ducks team. And if you're looking for a line to match up against a top line of another team like a Nathan MacKinnon, the Ducks should be looking at using that line. Jakob Silfverberg, everyone knows about his defensive chops. Danton Heinen, that's also what he does well. You look at his RAPM charts from Evolving Hockey, what he's good at is suppressing shots and suppressing chances against. And so Heinen's been good since they made that shift. That line on the whole is able to has been good since they made that shift. So awesome to see there.
Well, it makes sense because their styles kind of line up a little better. They're more north-south players. Rickard Rakell to me is a guy who he can play that north-south style, but I think he's better suited when he's playing with somebody who's going to find him as he's probing for that open ice, as he's looking to get his chances. And I'm not saying that he's cheating the game or anything like that, but he's a guy who's not necessarily going to be quite as involved defensively. He's looking to get on the rush. And with Getzlaf, that's a guy who's going to find him every single time. You don't really have any natural playmakers on that line with Henrique and Silfverberg. Henrique can pass some, but that's not really the strength of his game. And Silfverberg, I mean, you want to talk about a north-south player, that's what he is. So I think that you put those three together, Heinen, Henrique, Silfverberg, the HHS line, HSH, I don't know. It works. And yeah, their role moving forward is going to be interesting. I still think Dallas Eakins seems to view them as an offensive line. And that's what we're seeing in the deployment. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kid line tonight?
Sure. Well, you can start with it because it seems like you want to bring this up, so you have thoughts.
I don't know. They haven't been very good the last few games, it feels like. It feels like they are struggling a bit defensively. I think Sam Steele has looked good tonight. I think that he had some good sequences. I think Max Comtois even had some moments. But this was probably the worst game I've seen Troy Terry play in a long time. I mean, maybe his numbers weren't so bad, but just watching him play looked really uncomfortable with the puck. I mean, he just seemed to be off in his timing, turning it over. He had a dump in that couldn't even dump it in correctly. It basically instantly turned into a rush for the Colorado Avalanche going the other way because it was picked off so easily. So although you want to see that line succeed if you're the Ducks because those three guys are the future, I feel like we're maybe reaching a point where they're struggling a bit, and maybe they need to be broken up in some way, because they are still struggling very much defensively. Even in tonight's game, they had the second most expected goals against, but their time on ice was, I mean, they had the least time on ice together.
Yeah.
So of all four lines. So I think that there's just something kind of missing with that line, and maybe it's the deployment, maybe it's who they're playing with which defenders they're playing with, but I don't really see as much there as I did in the first few games.
Yeah, my issue with that line, I think you and I both wanted to succeed, because I think in concept you and I both really love that line setup, and that basically kind of the thought process behind it, having these three young guys that are all hungry, kind of playing a more creative style of game. The issue that I think I have is that outside of that first game where they were the best line for the Ducks, on the whole, they haven't been that great defensively, and the numbers kind of bear that.
Their numbers have been terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Their numbers have not been good, and I think that's my biggest concern, is that they haven't been good. They had that one good game, and then they haven't really been as good. I think the positive that you can take away from that line is that they have shown in flashes in almost every game the creativity, the offensive ability, but the issue is it's just in flashes, and there's not enough substance there on the whole yet. And I think that they need to have more consistency in their game. That's what's been missing so far.
And they give it all back defensively. Like, that's the big problem there, is that even if they're not showing flashes, as long as they can hold up their end of the bargain defensively, then it's okay, right? It's just kind of a low event style, but that's not what's happening at all. And I haven't really dug into it, so I don't know who's the culprit, if it's just all three, if it's the sum of the parts, or if it's one of them that's struggling, but it's just not really working. And this isn't that shocking. I mean, Sam Steele and Max Comtois had really bad defensive numbers last year, so expecting that to kind of flip on a dime maybe might not have been entirely reasonable.
Yeah, I think just on the whole, something's not clicking in the defensive zone for them. And to me, the only thing that's somewhat surprising
they're young players.
Exactly.
Who are this is their first regular role together.
Yeah.
So not shocking, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's get into the biggest topic to me of this game. I don't really have much to say on the blue line, because I think Larson, Welinski, they were not very good. And one trend I do want to talk about, Kevin Shattenkirk has really struggled the last few games.
He has.
He's looked completely overmatched in some of these games, and maybe the Avalanche are just a really bad stylistic matchup. But even if you go back to against Minnesota, where he took 3 penalties in one game, he's gotten into this really bad habit of, and maybe this is just something that we didn't know about him, but he tends to take bad penalties, and he's been caught a few times at his blue line, and I'm a little concerned about that, because the minutes with Lindholm, that's kind of what you're banking on if you're the Ducks right now, to win those minutes, and they're just not.
Yeah, they're not. And I think that's the thing that's surprising to me, is that I think maybe we were blinded by how good they were against Vegas, but their numbers were really good, and they've kind of really taken a downturn since then. And it's somewhat surprising, because I expected them to kind of work out so well together, but Shattenkirk has not been good. He's turned the puck over. I mean, there was the goal the goal tonight happened, or from the Avalanche happened, because it was a really bad turnover through the neutral zone, or not through the neutral zone, in the defensive zone, right to the middle of the ice, that gave the puck right to the Avalanche. And you can nitpick over who should have been covering the guy, but it was a poor pass, and that's what set up that goal. And I think that's the main culprit there of that goal, is that one.
Well, even Lindholm he's also taking penalties. Like, they're trading off bad penalties. And I mean, this is something we've known about Lindholm, is that he does tend to take more penalties. So yeah, I don't know when it's going to be time to maybe split them up, but right now it's not really a mix that's working out for them. I mean, we'll get more into this later, but they are playing Arizona for the next 2 games, and so that'll be kind of a test. If they still look bad against that team, then that's when you really start to ask questions.
I think we're going to know a lot more come then. I think we learned a lot about this team, I think, against Minnesota. I think throughout the season we're going to be able to say this, of games against Vegas, games against Colorado, even potentially games against St. Louis, even though St. Louis maybe not be as good as everyone thinks they are. Colorado and Vegas specifically, if you can end up picking up points off of those teams, I think you're in good shape to be able to make the playoffs. And I think you shouldn't take away too much from that, though, from those games because of how good those teams are. So,
But the problem is that they're going to have to play them a bunch more.
yes,
So you can't
4 more.
completely write it off
What
either.
is it? 6 more times each?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
they're not really out of
Well,
the woods
no,
yet
but
there.
but my point in saying
But I
that
get what you're saying.
my point in
Yeah.
saying that is with it being a divisional setup and is that Vegas, every team in the division has to play Vegas and Colorado 8 times. So you can basically expect that we expect Vegas and Colorado to basically run over the division, right? Overall, by the end of it all,
Yes.
Vegas, Colorado
Yes.
will run it over. In order to do that, they're going to have to beat all of the other teams, which means majority of the nights, other teams aren't going to be getting points from them. So any game against Vegas or Colorado where you can take away points from it, that's a win for you. And I think that the Ducks were able to get 3 points out of these 2 games is a big win for the Ducks.
No, I 100% agree with that. I think that this was the worst possible scheduling start to the season. I mean, they had no ability to kind of get their legs under them before facing the top dogs, which, hey, I mean, some people maybe prefer it this way. Just find out right away how you look against the best of the best, but they're not really gunning for the best of the best. They're gunning to beat the Arizonas, the LAs, the San Jose's, right? Those kind of teams.
Yeah.
So
And so I think that we're really going to need to see. I mean, the series against Arizona coming up is going to be really telling. We're not going to do too much of a preview on this episode, but that's a big series for this That's a big series for this Ducks team.
Yeah, they kind of have to win at least one of those games, I think.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, to me, the big topic though from tonight that I wanted to get on is this fascination that Dallas Eakins has with using the fourth line of Nick Delorier, Derek Grant, and Carter Rowney as the shutdown or matchup line. They played a ton against the McKinnon line tonight, which, I mean, you got to think about the rationale here, the big picture. The Derek Grant line was one of the very worst statistical lines at 5-on-5 last year. Huge disparity in how much they generate versus how much they give up. And you're choosing to match them up as the home team where you have the choice. You're choosing to match them up against one of the best lines in the NHL. Bold strategy, Cotton.
Yep. And I think that we can both say didn't pay off for them. They
got blasted in those minutes. I mean, what's crazy is that not only did they give up, some pretty significant volume, they also didn't generate a single shot attempt. Not one shot attempt with those 3 on the ice. It's so bad that it's almost, you could just chalk it up to it being an anomaly, but they got nothing out of those minutes. And it's just kind of mind-boggling to me. I mean, I think that I just don't really understand what Dallas Eakins sees in that line that's leads him to the conclusion that he can put them out there against some of the league's best and survive.
Yeah.
Because sure, they didn't get scored on, and you could argue that they succeeded in their mission because they actually gave up the least amount of expected goals against as a line. It's just, I think that is kind of overlooking the bigger picture.
Yeah, it 100% is. It's essentially, I mean, you can say good on Grant, good on Rowney, good on Delorier for in that matchup.
And by the way, I just want to quickly point out, this is not me saying that these are bad players or that, shame on them. Or this is just a choice that's being made by the staff, and that is a debatable choice, heavily debatable.
Yeah, and I think the issue here is that even though they did a decent job of limiting those chances against by only having 0.21 expected goals against at 5-on-5, the issue here is that they have no ability to turn the puck up against those guys. And basically you are just defending. And even if they're keeping the outside, that longevity of being stuck in the defensive zone will end up resulting potentially in a goal long term. I mean, John Gibson ends up facing more shots. I mean, even though it was 0.21 expected goals against, it was 5 shots on goal against, 9 shot attempts against while those guys were on the ice in their 8 minutes and 30 seconds of time on ice, which actually seems a little bit low because I think maybe as a line, they weren't always out there, but I think if you look
Grant, it felt like he was always out there.
It was 9 minutes out of McKinnon's 16 minutes of 5-on-5 play. Derek Grant was out there against him, which it feels like it's just not optimal. And this isn't necessarily an indictment of the Grant line. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I mean,
but it's a big ask for them.
It's putting them in a position to fail as compared to succeed. I mean, I talked about this at the front. Why would you not want to have Adam Henrique, Danton Heinen, and Jakob Silfverberg out there? I mean, Danton Heinen and Jakob Silfverberg can hang with Nathan McKinnon. Maybe they won't. They will get. They're not able to skate as fast as him. Maybe they're not able to fully keep up, but they can at least hang and be able to play defensively against those guys.
And there's also a threat that they may generate some offense the other way.
Exactly.
Whereas with Grant, it's just not there. Now, one thing I do want to point out that is kind of interesting is that Lindholm and Shattenkirk played a bunch of their minutes with that line, and so. Is that like a 5-man unit going on, the shutdown unit?
Maybe that ends up being more of something to look into about why maybe Shattenkirk hasn't looked as good.
He's just playing with these guys with these tough assignments that just don't really make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
When you put it all together.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I think that does give some context to Shattenkirk. I still don't think he's been playing well, but in terms of his overall stats, maybe you can give that a little time. Now, here's the argument that I could see for why they would do this. You tell yourself, okay, we're not going to win those minutes at all, but if we can survive them to some degree, then that will free up our other lines to go to work. And you could say that that strategy did bear out because the Ducks did win the expected goals battle in almost every other line. I mean, outside of the Sam Steele line. Henrique's line did well in that respect. Getzlaf's line did well. Both those lines scored. So maybe just kind of taking an L in one category to win in other places is how they're viewing it. I'm not saying that that's what I would do.
Yeah.
But I could see that being the thought process.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being the thought process there. I think that obviously you and I would find a lot of flaws with that thought process. I think if you have a line that's getting outshot, at least if they can generate potentially something and get it out of your zone, that's helpful. Yeah. But to get completely shattered where you don't have a shot attempt for, that's just bad. That's bad as a line when you can't have one shot attempt.
It's so counterintuitive to go this route. That's the thing. Even if you're not some big believer in analytics or whatever, I still think that you just look at that line and you tell yourself, I don't know if I want them out there all the time against Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't take a rocket scientist here, but that's the route that Dallas Eakins went with. And hey, they won the game. So we can't completely bash them. It's just kind of a long-term thing to keep an eye on because it's very clear that Dallas Eakins does view them as the shutdown line. And I just have some reservations there. Okay. Anything else on this game before we take a quick little break here?
Nope. John Gibson's very good, and that is all.
Yeah, and Ryan Getzlaf, by the way, just in case you forgot, Ryan Getzlaf is still very good.
Are you taking your victory lap right now?
No, it's not really a victory lap because he would do that anyway. But yeah, I think that's another thing that we haven't totally talked about is that Ryan Getzlaf, I don't know. What's your read on his season so far?
I think he's had a good season. I think that I don't think he was as good in the first couple games of the season. I think once they put him back with Raquel, I don't know if maybe it's just a situation where he had better line mates, better quality of line mates that he was able to do more with it. But in the first, and maybe it's a situation where Vegas just did a really, really good job of shutting him down. Against Vegas, he had some flashes, but I feel like on the whole, it really just didn't click for him in that series. Whereas I think ever since then, he's looked a whole lot more dangerous. He's set up a lot more chances. He's finding guys with these ridiculous passes. He did that against Vegas also by finding Lundstrom, and I think maybe it's a situation where you get him better. Heinen, you're right. Sorry, where you give him better line mates where they're able to finish those chances, and it's fun to see him play still, and I think that's where I'm at right now is that no matter what, we're in the twilight of his career. This is a franchise superstar where hopefully he plays all of his career as a Duck, and I'm just enjoying watching him dish out passes and having some fun.
He almost won a 50-50 race for an icing tonight. I don't know if you saw that, but his skating looks okay. I mean, the thing with Getzlaf, and I agree with you on all those points. And by the way, me correcting in Lundstrom, very on brand for me, just not giving Lundstrom any credit for anything. But I think that, it's the things that he's doing well. They're still completely there. And as long as you get him guys that can do something with those gifts, you're going to see results. I mean, that's why the lunacy of putting Lundestrom on that first line to start the season, it's just going to go down as such a terrible move because you wasted an opportunity. I mean, look at how as soon as you put Rickard Rakell on that line, just someone who can do anything with the puck, who has any degree of offense to their game, how quickly that yields results. Dallas Eakins just never. We're just never going to forgive him for that. I think. I think that one's just going to go down in history as
that one you're going to hold on to for a while.
I was on the fourth period show this weekend, and I even brought that up. I somehow brought that up when they were asking me just general questions. I somehow slipped in a Lundestrom shot. So there you go.
Damn, going big time with it on Sirius XM.
Well, I want people to know. You got to know what's going on here. Not just the big picture stuff. The nuts and bolts are important. But before we move on, should we talk about our friends at Bespoke Post?
Yes. So the curators at Bespoke Post have done it again this winter with the all-new lineup of Essential Box of Awesome collection for guys, guaranteed to upgrade your life. Whether it's showcase pieces to level up your indoor hosting skills or cozy threads for those bustery days, Bespoke only sends guys the best stuff every month. No matter what you're into, Box of Awesome has you covered. From style and grooming goods to barware, cooking tools, and outdoor gear, Box of Awesome has collections for every part of your life. And so right now, I actually got a little survival knife from them. It's really cool. And on the way, actually, I have a very fun duffel bag coming my way. I've needed a good duffel bag because Felix, should I tell this here? Should I out myself here? I think it's time.
Where's this going?
The duffel bag that I've been using for the past like 3 or 4 years when I go on a little weekend trip, weekend getaway, things like that, where I don't want to have a full suitcase. I've been using the Ducks Die Hard bag for about the past 2 or 3 years, and it's pretty worn. It's not exactly the nicest thing ever. I think my wife shakes her head in shame anytime we go to a hotel, and that's the one that I have with me. Yeah. And so coming
really
in from
her style.
Yeah, coming in from Bespoke Post, I have a very nice duffel bag coming my way, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean, regardless, I mean, I think that if you're looking to get one of these boxes, there's just so many different options. I mean, you can get headphones, shaving materials, the Survivor knife. So it's just kind of a cool thing, and it can serve a variety of purposes. So I'm excited to get mine as well. Went with the headphones, so it's gonna be nice to kind of keep this going. And if you're one of those people who likes, I mean, especially right now in kind of this world that we're in with still having to stay home, variety is truly the spice of life because every day can really feel like Groundhog Day. So Bespoke Post can get you covered there.
Yep. And to get started, you can take the quiz at boxofawesome.com. Your answers will help them pick the right box of awesome for you. So if you're a little bit indecisive, don't know what you want, there's a quiz there, and they release new boxes every single month. It's free to sign up, and you can skip a month or cancel anytime. Each box costs only $45, but has over $70 worth of gear inside. So you can get 20% off your first monthly box when you sign up at boxofawesome.com. Use the code CTP at checkout. That's CTP like Crash the Pond. That's boxofawesome.com, code CTP for 20% off your first box.
Awesome. Yeah, I am looking forward to this. So, covered that game that happened tonight. Big win for the Anaheim Ducks. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the games that happened throughout the week, some of the takeaways from those games?
Yes, let's go ahead and do it. So we had the entire Minnesota Wild series that happened, both games against them where the Ducks were able to win one, lose one. And then you have the first game against the Colorado Avalanche where the Ducks were able to go into overtime and lose the game in 3-on-3. Where do you want to start?
There's just so much here. Can we say this? The Ducks, name a worst combination, the Ducks and 3-on-3 overtime. It's kind of baffling how bad they are in overtime.
It's pretty bad, and I think that's the takeaway, obviously, from the game on Friday. I mean, the Ducks played by far their best game out of the entirety of the season, including tonight.
Well.
They played really well.
They played well. They took it to the Avalanche.
This was the first game of the entire season where you can say John Gibson was not the reason they got points. They deserved to get that game to overtime. They deserved to win that game. And what's very frustrating is that it seems like basically ever since 3-on-3 has come into play, the Ducks are just very bad at it. And here's my theory behind
like a
it.
special kind of bad.
Here's my theory behind it.
Okay.
The Ducks have never been a team that have thrived in transition play. Even when they were at their peak, they were a team that was a grinded out type of team. They were built on Ryan Getzlaf. They were built on Ryan Kessler. They were built on these guys that would hold the puck in the offensive zone and really kind of wear down teams and grind it out to be able to get a shot in the first in the offensive zone after having some zone time. 3-on-3 is not meant for that. 3-on-3, you need to have transition play, and you need to be able to push the puck up the ice and be able to get guys to be able to make a mistake while you're moving on it and be able to cash in on a potential 2-on-1 when you beat a guy. And it's based on individual battles of one-on-one play. And I think the issue for the Ducks is even now, even as they've had an influx of some younger players, they're still not good in in transition in the offensive part of that, and they're not able to beat guys. Anytime they end up with a 2-on-1 or things like that, it's a situation where that's happened because of guys blowing a tire, different things like that. And so they're not able to generate and manufacture odd man rushes by themselves. They need mistakes from the other team. And so the issue here is that the Ducks, when they have the puck, they're trying to just slowly enter the zone and basically cycle around until hopefully the other team makes a mistake. The issue is that guys just keep them to the outside. And so I think that the issue here is the Ducks just don't have a roster that's ever built for this situation. They're very much kind of set in slower style of hockey, and they don't have the ability to push it.
You know what I'm going to say to that.
What are you going to say?
Well, that doesn't mean you have to be this bad at 3-on-3, even
True.
if your roster isn't. I mean, no one's building their roster for 3-on-3, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think overall, though, in that game, a lot of signs of growth for the Ducks in the first game against Colorado. I mean, they actually outshot Colorado in the first period, 18-13. Didn't score, but when you compare that first period to the first periods that we've seen from this team, just some truly gruesome first periods, that was somewhat impressive. I mean, even given the fact that the Avs were maybe dealing with some fatigue, still to come out and have an advantage was a sign of progress for this team.
Yep, definitely.
And then I think if you look at the rest of that game, I mean, I think that one thing that we have to mention is that when we talk about Shattenkirk potentially struggling, had a pretty bad turnover in that game as well. But, we did see, and talking about that pairing, we did see Hampus Lindholm get on the board. Really nice feed from Rickard Rakell. Rickard Rakell is really just going right now. But just kind of hilarious that in that 3-on-3 overtime, John Gibson stops a 2-on-0, does everything you could possibly ask. And then the Ducks can't cover for that wraparound, and it ends up being an Avalanche win. So very exciting game, if nothing else.
It was the most entertaining game on the whole for the Ducks. And this was, I think, the first game where they really actually got chances. If you look at expected goal totals in all situations, they were at 3.33 expected goals for. I think this was the first time they had broken 3. I don't even think they had broken really 2.5 in all situations throughout any game. So they were playing fun hockey. And I mean, this was a game where I look back on it and and the Ducks were pushing and they were having fun, and it was an entertaining game to watch. And I think that this was one where if the Ducks played this type of game throughout the season, even if they lost, and I said this on Twitter afterwards, I'm very content as a Ducks fan with this game, because here's the reason is that even though they lost, if the Ducks played more games like this, they would win more than they would lose. It's that simple. They're outplaying the other team, and they're playing an up tempo style, and they're playing a fun style. So not only could it potentially result in wins, but it's creating a more entertaining product for everyone to watch.
I agree with you. Let's kind of recap the Minnesota series a little bit, since we haven't dived into that yet. So what are some of your thoughts? I mean, you are one of the biggest Minnesota Wild fans in the world, so surely you have some takeaways here.
I thought that was you.
Well, Marco Rossi isn't in the lineup yet, so until that happens, I'm not fully in. Yeah.
So here's my takeaway from this series is the Ducks got lucky to be able to get a win in the first game. I believe was the one where they ended up getting the win out of it. 1-0 win. I mean, expected goals really show that the Minnesota Wild really generated the most chances. I think that maybe the only thing for the Wild moving forward that is a hole that would open up for the Ducks is I think the Wild may be missing out a little bit on their lineup optimization, and I think that they're going to struggle to score goals slightly as a result of that. And even though they're generating good chances, things like that, it may be a Hurricane situation of a couple years ago where they're getting a lot of chances, but they don't necessarily have the finishers on the ice, whether that is because they're, for whatever reason, playing Victor Rask with Kirill Kaprizov, or they were. I think they played Bukestad with him tonight, but they're missing that center skill to be able to distribute the puck and put it back in the back of the net. And so I think even though the Wild are good at 5-on-5, they may struggle to score goals as a result, and maybe that's what we saw in this first game, not having necessarily the scoring talent to be able to put one behind John Gibson. Now, having said that, this is not a repeatable way to win a game for the Ducks. They really played a pretty poor game in that first one that they won 1-0, and then I think the Wild. Yeah. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that first game outside of that?
Well, I was just going to echo that they were not good in that first game, and they did steal that one, which when you have John Gibson in net, that's the recipe, right? Get one and just say, here you go, John Gibson. Just take care of the rest.
Yeah. And then in the second game, you saw the Ducks play a bit more of a competitive game. They were still kind of behind the 8 ball, though. They were not playing the best hockey ever. They did end up getting goals from Nick Deslauriers and Cam Fowler off some nice plays from that line. And I believe in that game specifically, the fourth line actually played a really good game. And I'm not one to necessarily give them props all the time, but they deserve it for that game. Yeah. They were on the front.
Okay performances this season. Like, we're not categorically rejecting them as a concept. It's just, it was more so about tonight. But yeah, I mean, what I would say about that game that was somewhat encouraging and that maybe trickled over into the Colorado series a bit is that after getting really pushed around in the first period, I mean, when you look at the stats, they were just completely outplayed. I mean, they got almost doubled up in shot attempts. They did manage to win those categories in the second and third period. And so even though it wasn't a pretty game for them, I do think that there was at least some sign of growth there. And hey, I texted you after the game that was a growth, an example of growth, and you rejected it pretty hard. And as it turns out, the Ducks looked better against Colorado. So
well, they made the change this was when you texted me that. Let's be clear, that was after game 1 when you texted me that, not game 2.
No, it was after game 2. Maybe it was after game 1.
It was after game 1 because game 1 was where the changes happened, and I guess that's one positive you can take away from the first game was when the changes to the lineup happened, where you saw the swap of Raquel back to Getzlaf, and I think that they did see positive results after that in that first game.
We also saw. I mean, okay, so 2 other things that I guess we should point out about that game, that series is we saw Sonny Milano come into the lineup.
Yes.
So a lineup change there. He looked great right away.
He did.
I mean, it didn't take any time for him to look like he was meant to be on that line with Getzlaf. But unfortunately, we saw him end up on IR. I don't really know what the injury was for him.
It may have happened in practice. Who knows?
And then Josh Manson. I mean, this is the other big one that I'm surprised we haven't talked about yet, is he got into a fight, I think, in the first period of the first Minnesota game.
Yep.
And suffered an oblique injury, and now he's out 6 weeks. So I guess this is kind of a good segue for us to go into some more bigger picture topics. But what is your view of this team now moving forward after what you've seen?
I think that the lines are pretty much constructed how they probably should be as of now. If you're going to have the fourth line be the fourth line, then okay, fine. I think the other 3 lines probably should stay as is. Maybe you mess around with the kid line and maybe put a David Backes there to help out a bit defensively.
I think the time for that is coming.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking.
And maybe it is a situation where you put David Backes there and take Max Comtois out and to really solidify that line a little bit defensively.
That's the other thing. Who do you take out from that line?
I mean,
because can you really take out Comtois when he's been scoring?
Well, here's the issue is Max Comtois is the only one that's waiver exempt.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yep. Troy Terry is not waiver exempt. Sam Steele is waiver exempt also, so it could be Sam Steele. I doubt that will happen though.
I mean, it's and I think Sam Steele's probably been the best one of the 3. I know that Comtois has the goals, but I think Sam Steele has been the more all-around player of the 3.
Yeah, and
Terry, as much as I've gone to bat for him, he hasn't in the games that we've seen, he hasn't taken that kind of next step. He still looks good at times, but he still looks a lot like the player we saw last year. Just does some things really well, kind of stays in his lane. We haven't really seen him take that next step. He talked before the season about wanting to be one of the best players in the league and not just kind of get by. And so far, we just haven't really seen much of that from him.
Yeah, we really haven't. And I think that that's somewhat of a frustration of mine, because I've obviously been someone to bat for him for a long time. And we've seen it in flashes, but I mean, he's at the age where he needs to start producing. I mean, it's that plain and simple. It needs to start coming.
I wouldn't be shocked if he gets, I don't know, if something happens there.
So I think that's the line where maybe we could see some changes to it. I think that Henrique, Heinen, Silverberg is working right now.
Well, they're rolling.
Yeah, and Getzlaf and Raquel are working well. Maybe you look at bringing up Trevor Zegras and putting him with Getzlaf. I think that is. I still look at that line and I'm just like, even though Max Jones, no disrespect to him, he had a really good game tonight. He's been good since he's come into the lineup. But I look at that line, and now granted, Zegras would play a different game. He's not as good on the forecheck as Max Jones, so maybe that's a downfall. But I just look at the potential of having Getzlaf and Zegras on the ice with Ricard Raquel, and I just kind of really, my brain just goes to all these different places about the potential, the amount of goals that line could score on the whole.
Well, you got to think, though, what kind of Zegras are you getting as a first-year NHLer, though? I mean, because you're not getting World Junior Zegras.
No, you're not. But
no.
But I do think that, and this is one thing I wanted to bring up, actually, was that we saw Bowen Byram jump into the lineup for the Avalanche. And for those of you that watched the World Juniors, he not only same draft class, but played at the World Juniors, and he looked really good at the World Juniors. And you can see that there is a translation level from the World Juniors to the NHL. There is a step up, but if you look good at the World Juniors, you can look good in the NHL right away also. And we see that. I thought Bowen Byram looked absolutely fantastic in these 2 games that he played. And I think
the Avs kind of need him.
And I think that having looked at that, I see that and I'm like, well, Trevor Zegras, why can't he make that same jump? Why do the Ducks are in a much different position than the Avalanche, and yet the Avalanche are thrusting a kid into their lineup to help them and not trying to let him develop. And it's because they think that he's the best player on the team, or best person to jump into the lineup. And I don't really understand the logic behind keeping Zegras down if he keeps doing that.
Yeah, we're going in a bunch of different directions
right
now, but that's fine. That's fine. It's totally
That's
okay.
The show.
It's, I'm okay with it. But one thing I did want to see on Zegras, I think that the last 2 games kind of hurt his chances of coming up in the near future. The more that the Ducks play well and put up some goals and win, the less I think the Ducks feel the pressure to bring him in. After the Minnesota series, I was clamoring for Zegras because I thought this is an example of why you need as much offense as possible in your lineup. But the last 2 games against Colorado, I mean, maybe Colorado is just not as good of a defensive team. Who knows? But they did look better offensively. They did. I mean, still wasn't great. There's still definitely some more meat on the bone. But I think that they're not going to really go to that route until they feel like they absolutely have to. And I disagree with that, of course.
Yep, 100%. I think
that you're better off.
And so I think that they'll probably keep Jones with Getzlaf and Raquel unless Milano comes back and maybe he jumps back into that spot.
He's on IR, so what's the minimum there?
I think it's like a week. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's a week. It is
12 days.
Something along those lines. So in terms of overall roster construction with the defense now, what we've seen since Manson went out is we've seen Lindholm and Shattenkirk, and it seems like that's going to stay the way it is. The returns on that D pair have not been great, actually.
No, they've been terrible. That's what we've been talking about.
Yep, exactly. Whereas, you know what's weird? You know what's really strange?
I'm ready for this.
Once Josh Manson went out, Yanni Hakanpää got elevated to become Cam Fowler's partner, and Cam Fowler's numbers and his on-ice play severely got better. They made a huge jump. And Yanni Hakanpää.
Finish up. Sorry.
And it's hard to not make the connection that Yanni Hakanpää has made this Ducks defense better.
I love that because I know that we have listeners who are very much down on the Josh Manson as a player, and I can just hear them saying, "Yes, of course." Of course, Fowler is better without Josh Manson. But hey, there's some legitimacy to that view, because Manson looked awful before he got injured, and I think that fight was a frustration fight. I think that he was just looking for a way to get in there, because his game just really wasn't where it needed to be. And what's interesting with Yanni Hakanpää is, the numbers there, I mean, they're not awesome as a pairing. They're basically just breaking even. From an expected goals perspective, they are above. They're actually,
they're like 60%.
Well, okay, so I'm looking.
Well, that was prior. Sorry, that was prior to tonight, though. I think they were at like 60%.
Sorry,
prior
no,
to
okay,
tonight.
this is my bad. I scrolled right as I was going to pull it up. So yeah, they're at 53.02 expected goals for percentage.
Okay, so that's after tonight, because I think tonight they were in the
tonight.
Yeah, but yeah.
But shot attempts. But so what I find interesting about that is, this is now year 2 of Cam Fowler looking really good next to a partner who's just kind of a stay-at-home, not quite as mobile, not taking as many risks type defenseman. Because we saw Fowler do well next to Eric Goodbranson, who I don't think he's definitely not the same player as Yanni Hakanpää, but maybe a similar archetype. I will say, though, Yanni Hakanpää, he can get involved offensively at times as well. I mean, he's jumped up in the play. He's made some nice passes, gotten some shots on net. So he's not just purely like an anchor back there either.
Yeah, he's not. And I mean, he's jumped into the play a couple of times, and it's been interesting. He actually, I think, almost had a give and go with Getzlaf, where he almost was able to score. He's been entertaining.
Put him at forward.
He's not been horrible. He doesn't look as slow as he did at the beginning of last year. He's been serviceable. Now, having said that, I probably wouldn't want him in my top 4 typically, but he's a perfectly good bottom pairing defenseman. He's going to be elevated into this role for, what is it, 6 weeks, I think is what Manson's prognosis is. I think when I looked it up, it's going to be 20-some-odd games. 20-some-odd games that he's going to miss.
Here's the question, though. So a couple things off of that. So I think that for right now, they're working, so you keep them together. But here's my question. You've seen right now about 3 games of Andy Welinski and Jacob Larson. Numbers not at all convincing. I mean, they've been outchanced, outshot, attempted. Expected goals not in their favor, which, I mean, shocker, right, that those two wouldn't be great together. What's going on with Ben Hutton? I mean, why hasn't he played yet?
I think it's just a situation of maybe he's not up to speed.
Did I catch flack for this? I don't know if I caught flack. Who knows?
You got a little bit of flack.
I was called into question more than getting flack. So was this Wednesday? Or
I don't remember. I think it was Tuesday. I think it was the first game against the Wild.
Tuesday.
Or no, it was Wednesday.
So on Wednesday, the Ducks, we found out that they were dressing Andy Welinski with Ben Hutton out of COVID protocol, out of quarantine, had only a couple days to skate. But I went on Twitter and kind of let a hot take fly. I said, yeah, this Ben, why would you even go to this AHL or an Andy Welinski when you have Ben Hutton there? I understand that he's been out, but he's probably still better. And the fact that Dallas Eakins brought up that, Welinski has chemistry with Jacob Larson, the AHL, just kind of drove me up the wall, because you have Ben Hutton there. You signed him to a contract for a reason. So anyway, that really fired me up. And then Eric Stevens replied to my tweet saying, well, this is the organization's view that basically he hasn't had much time, which is a reasonable view, right? But they have stuck with it since that time. So maybe I wasn't so crazy to say that it was just a decision that they're making.
I mean,
or maybe Ben Hutton still isn't ready, but how much time does he need to get up to speed?
Yeah. I really want to see Ben Hutton join this lineup, and I'm very curious to see what they do with him once he joins. Maybe they didn't want his first game to be against Colorado. I'm really reaching right now, and I fully admit that I'm reaching to find logic.
I just want to say that I was feeling a little scared after feeling like, hey, maybe I'm wrong here, but over time my case has gotten stronger, I would say. I just want to point that out. They just, Dallas Eakins and his AHL pupils,
Yeah.
He's got to go back to him when he can. But, I think Welinski, watching him play,
He looks fine.
Has he been? He looks fine. He's
Yeah.
just very limited. He's not really gonna do a whole lot for you out there, but he's not necessarily gonna lose it for you either. So I mean, I'm not trying to. This is nothing against the players involved. It's just more of the decision-making process and who's going to help your team the most.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that there are better ways to optimize this roster than I think what Dallas Eakins doing. I mean, there's so many things. Like we said, the matchup with Derek Grant, the matchup with Derek Grant is one thing. I've had one person now get in my mentions on Twitter basically telling me they only allowed 1 point, or Nathan McKinnon only had 1 point in the series, so I think they did pretty well. You don't know what you're talking about, and I'm like, sure.
Oh yeah,
sure.
The fourth line truthers are the best.
It's baffling. But regardless, I think there's a bigger topic to talk about here, which is the fact that if we're looking at the overall roster construction, it seems like Bob Murray understands that something does need to happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something that was really coming down the pipe on Friday and then came to a fruition Saturday morning at like 7 a.m., 6:30 a.m. Pierre-Luc Dubois, who we've talked about quite a bit on this podcast, the center for the Blue Jackets, played his last game for the Blue Jackets this week after the shift. He was shipped out and to Winnipeg. But as the discussions were picking up, being made more public, we found out that the Ducks, from Pierre LeBrun, from all the insiders, that the Ducks were really in on Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it sounds like they've also been in on him since the very beginning. So they've been in hot pursuit of Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it ended up being that the Blue Jackets traded him to Winnipeg in exchange for is it Jack Roslovic? Jack Roslovic and Patrick Laine, and I think there was a pick too.
Yeah.
The point being, the Ducks did not get him. Now, my understanding is that the Ducks weren't putting Zegras in a package.
No,
so
I don't believe they were willing to part with Trevor Zegras or Jamie Drysdale as part of this. And I think that those were the two untouchables for them. And I think if you look at this package that Columbus ended up getting from Winnipeg, I think the issue that the Ducks have, and I think credit to Bob Murray, even though the deal obviously didn't get done, so you can't give him too much credit, but at least he recognized what there was in Pierre-Luc Dubois and was going for him. I think the issue for the Ducks at all right now, or with this trade, is that the Jets had an asset that uniquely fit exactly what Columbus wanted in a return. Columbus didn't want to give up Pierre-Luc Dubois in the first place. They were trading him because of his trade request, and basically the shit had hit the fan with the situation with what had happened on, what was it, Thursday in that game, where he was benched for all of it, and something had to happen. And they were moving him as a result of that. They were moving a 22-year-old potential first-line center that was just starting to enter his prime. This is a guy that was helping them not only now, Columbus is trying to make the playoffs this season, but also their long-term first-line center. And they were probably looking for something that would fill that role in a similar fashion for them long-term. And so the Jets had that similar type of piece. I mean, Patrick Laine was taken second overall. Pierre-Luc Dubois was taken third overall. They're the same exact age. They have the same outlook where they both help the team now and they both help long-term. I don't know if the Ducks had something that would do uniquely that. The Ducks they have assets that will either help in the now or help in the long term. And you can put together a package that would do both, but nothing in that same unique way that Patrick Laine does, even if you included Trevor Zegras in the deal. I don't think Trevor Zegras being in the deal really helps in the same way Patrick Laine does, because Trevor Zegras doesn't help you as much now as Patrick Laine does. And I think that's the reality of the situation of, even if Zegras was included, this deal might not have gotten done. It may have gone Winnipeg's way.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think that the fact that the Ducks, from what we know, did not include Zegras, and made it that far, it means that they at least had some kind of competitive offer, or that he wasn't requisite. He wasn't necessarily what the Blue Jackets were looking for in a return, like you said. My guess, if I were to try to cobble together what I think the Ducks offered, I would be hard-pressed not to include Ricard Raquel's name in there. Because if you look at what they got from the Jets, they got an offensive player who is in his prime and who is right now under team control. So Ricard Raquel is probably the closest fit to that on the Ducks right now on their roster.
Yeah, and I think this is purely speculation, no information on this at all. But if I were to speculate on kind of the deal the Ducks would have put together, it probably would have had to center around probably Ricard Raquel and Sam Steele, maybe an additional pick, maybe it's Max Comtois in there also. And so I think that's probably what it's centered around, because Ricard Raquel gets you value now that helps you now. Sam Steele has value that will help you in the future. So it's, like I said, you can have two pieces in there that kind of help take both of those things, but there's not that one kind of piece like a Patrick Laine that does that.
Well, that's the thing, is I feel like my question would be, how did this break down? Because was it at the point where the Blue Jackets and Jets had their offer kind of nearly agreed to, gentleman's agreement, and then, Kekalainen calls Murray and says, hey, the Jets and we're close to being done. What was the thing that would have unlocked that, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything that he could have done? Was it Zegras? What was it that could have swayed it?
I honestly don't even know if Zegras does that for it, though. I mean, the thing is, they must have had an attractive package, because when there were basically the reports where there were a lot of teams in on Dubois, as you would expect. I think it was like 12 teams or something like that were in on him.
The finalists were Calgary, Montreal, Anaheim, and Winnipeg.
Yes,
those were the 4 teams that were still in on him.
And so it basically Columbus told teams that their package wasn't good enough, and they were out. And basically, so it almost was like The Bachelor handing out roses. Yep, had to go there. Wife watches it, and that's what this seemed like. And the Ducks were not the one chosen. Their package wasn't considered good enough.
Oh God,
didn't even mean to do that, but
But so my thing is this: I think that this is healthy from Bob Murray, because this is a proper assessment of what they need. They need a high-end young player that's already good, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is that. Now, there may be fans who are frustrated that the Ducks didn't make this happen, and it's like you were saying off the top on this subject. I just don't know I just don't think the Ducks had a path to getting him. Maybe they did. Maybe it was Zegras. Maybe it was Drysdale, and that was where Bob Murray would draw the line. Now, my question is this: let's say that the Blue Jackets tell you, we will send you Dubois if you give us, like, let's say the ask is Raquel and Zegras, let's say. My answer would be yes to that.
My answer probably would be yes. As hard as
I would have no problem trading Trevor Zegras to Columbus for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I know people might hate me for saying that, but
no, it's a fair statement.
The reality of the matter is that Pierre-Luc Dubois is already an established NHLer. He's only 22. He is already a potential, not best case scenario, but kind of an upper percentile outcome for Trevor Zegras. Just a really good offensive center. Maybe has some issues defensively, but he's still got a really good upside. Now, of course, doesn't have the playmaking chops of Zegras, just watching him play, but he is of that ilk of just a high-end young player. And so to me, if the cost is Zegras and Raquel, it's just more sure value that you're getting with Dubois, and you're still also helping your rebuild, right? You're not really sacrificing anything in your rebuild, in my opinion. I mean, it sucks to lose Zegras in that moment, but I think it's more certainty by getting Dubois back.
I think from a Ducks fan perspective, it's a tough pill to swallow, and it's not necessarily.
I 100% understand that. Yeah,
it's not necessarily the incorrect deal. I think from my perspective as a fan, it would be hard though, because you obviously get
you want to see him. You want to see the best prospect in a long time in Ducks franchise history. You want to see that come to fruition in a Ducks uniform. And look, there's many cautionary tales in the NHL of teams trading prospects in deals that ended up, where the prospect ended up being really good, and the
Nick
player
Suzuki, for instance.
Nick Suzuki is one. I mean, as a Canadiens fan, I've got plenty that I could go off of that I'm not going to bring up. But this is different, though. This isn't Ryan McDonough for Scott Gomez, right? Because you're getting Pierre-Luc Dubois at the very beginning of his prime, right? And
Yeah.
so it's different.
No, it's 100% different. And here's the thing: is you're getting Trevor Zegras. They're different players, but I think from an offensive impact perspective, I think you hope he can turn into Pierre-Luc Dubois. So if you're moving him, you are getting that in return. So instead of
exactly.
like it may end up where Zegras may ends up being a higher ceiling, but you're getting a more for sure thing right now. And I think that's what you're trading for at the moment is you're trading for a more for sure thing. It's something that helps you out in the now. It helps you out in the future. It's a Bob Murray move to basically help the team. Now, granted, I do respect the fact that kind of what you and I had heard that Trevor Zegras was a for sure no as part of this deal. And so I think that Bob Murray understood that he wanted to keep Zegras and potentially have Zegras be paired with Pierre-Luc Dubois long term. And I think that is the right approach to this and try to be able to make this deal happen.
Then it's a big value add if you get Dubois without giving up Zegras, because now you're really set up for the future. Now you're looking at a great situation.
So
whereas if you give up Zegras, it's still a win, but it's not as big of a win.
So zooming out big picture, kind of what this means for the Ducks, where do they go from here type of situation. The Ducks were in on Dubois, and I don't think that's necessarily surprising, but I think that it is telling because it shows that Bob Murray understands this team isn't good enough. And now, granted, Pierre-Luc Dubois is a great player, so you should be in on him no matter what. But the fact that you make it to the end is an understanding that your roster needs to get better, that you need to make this team better, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is a massive upgrade to that. And I think that this is really the first time that we've seen in some ways an acknowledgement from Murray that this roster needs significant improvement.
Especially when you see how the veterans of this team started the season, I think that may have expedited Murray's thought process because now Jakob Silfverberg has scored his first goal, so has Rickard Rakell. Getzlaf is making plays, so that's moving in the right direction. But I still don't think that changes his overall view that there are guys in this team who maybe this is just who they are at this point, and you might want to kind of shuffle the pieces around a bit.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting. I mean, the thing that I'm wondering now, as we really zoom out and maybe start, I mean, did you want to do questions?
Yeah. So people in Twitch chat, start throwing some questions into the chat. We will get to those soon.
Okay. So we're going to get into those very soon. I just wanted to wrap up and say this. Where do the Ducks go from here? Because I think it's clear that even though the Ducks are they're kind of fighting for a playoff spot, Money Puck has them at 31.2% probability of making the playoffs right now, which kind of feels about right for how they've played. And they haven't given me enough confidence to say that this is a group that you should continue to double down on and try to just eke into the playoff picture. And I think that we've seen that from some of the ways in which some of the veterans have struggled. And I think that without Dubois being available now, what is the path to improvement? What is the path to both short and long-term improvement? And it's tough to say. There isn't really a situation now because not only is Dubois gone, but Laine is also gone. So if they were at all thinking about Laine, which we know that they had some interest in him, he's also gone. So I don't know what they do now. I mean, if the season kind of keeps up at this clip and things really go downhill, or they continue to struggle against the good teams and they can't really work their way into that fourth spot, I'm curious to see what Bob Murray's going to do because it feels like he's starting to trend towards let's make some significant changes.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get a feel for potentially players that may be on the trading block a little bit to maybe see who the Ducks could go at because I mean Pierre-Luc Dubois and Patrick Laine were really the two big names, and I don't really know any of the other ones from a forward perspective that really help out the Ducks from a significant standpoint. I mean, a big name that's been out there who's had a decent start to the season is Matt Dumba, but he's 26. I don't know if that's someone that I would want to go after for this team.
Not the same positional need being filled there. The one thing I did want to say, because I was asked this on Saturday on the fourth period show, was, is this a sign that Bob Murray is big game hunting? Is this a sign of more situations to come? And I couldn't really say yes to that because Pierre-Luc Dubois just so uniquely fits what they need right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
like he checks every single box. And I don't think another guy like that's going to come available in the near future. So I don't know if this is a sign that Murray is just getting out there and looking to make any trade he possibly can.
I also think
Could be.
I also think it's a situation where Pierre-Luc Dubois, I think, uniquely fits exactly kind of how Bob Murray views hockey. He's the style of player. I mean, no, it's true though, because it would be
not wrong.
It's an interesting jump to go from kind of a hard hitting, very skilled player in Ryan Getzlaf to a very similar type of build in Pierre-Luc Dubois. He doesn't necessarily have the playmaking ability of Ryan Getzlaf, but there's a lot of similarities between those two. The nastiness, the ability to get in, the big body, everything along those lines. And so I'm not necessarily sure I can say that that Bob Murray is big game hunting, or if he just saw a unique player that fit exactly what he wanted, and so he went all out after him. And so maybe
you know what it really was? This is the real explanation. He just got the rumor out there to put some fear into his veterans to play better. That's all it is.
You think that's where it's at?
No, I'm 100% joking.
Yeah, but yeah. So where do they go from here? I don't really know. I don't know, because I don't know who's really on the trading block. I don't really know. I want to believe that this is a sign that Bob Murray understands this roster needs to be improved, but I'm not necessarily sure because of what we just talked about that he actually thinks that. And so I think on the blue line there's a concern with obviously we're impressed with Yanni Hakanpää's game, but will that continue throughout the course of the season? I think long term, where does Trevor Zegras fit? There's still a lot of question marks on this team moving forward, and I think there's potentially more questions now than there were to start the year.
Well, that's the thing, and that's kind of I guess if we're going to cast some, we don't want to be Debbie Downers, but that's the thing. This team, the Ducks are aiming to make the playoffs. They have openly said that, so we're operating under that framework. They have said they want to make the playoffs. They haven't really looked like a playoff caliber team so far. Would you agree with that?
Yes. So if you had to, from what we've seen in the first week and a half of the season, where would you? What's your redone prediction for the Pacific?
I'm sticking with mine. I think they're fifth.
Well, overall for the Pacific, you think they're fifth, so you think it's gonna. You don't have to
West, you mean the Honda West?
Is it the West, not the Pacific? Yeah, Honda West. Sorry, the Honda West. It's probably gonna be some combination of Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis, and Minnesota above them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can almost lock Minnesota for third, but yeah, I still think that they're kind of a fifth place team,
and
just on the outside looking in.
I think it's a bit of a distant fifth, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that they're showing signs of competitiveness, and maybe they go on a run here. Maybe they rattle off 2 against Arizona and then find some wind in the next few games, but it just feels like it's not really there right now, and that's the thing. And if you successfully get Dubois, then all of a sudden the path becomes a lot clearer. It's more towards the future, and maybe you're better now, but the future looks brighter. And so now without that, I just think it's going to get to a point where if they're out of it by the trade deadline, or they're maybe not completely out of it, but maybe like the Rangers were a few years ago, where it's just this the probabilities aren't really there. Do they go tear down? I mean, do they start shipping out some veterans? It just feels like we're nearing that point. Now, I'm not calling it doomsday yet. There's still plenty of hockey left to be played, but this is a short season, and the Ducks just haven't given us enough to say, yes, they continue to go all in on this current group.
Yeah, and
maybe if they just played Ben Hutton, things would be better.
Let's end with this positive before we get into some questions. The Ducks do have a path to the playoffs, and I think that path to the playoffs is the fact that John Gibson is playing absolutely insane hockey and out of his mind. And with it being a shortened season of 56 games, it can be more likely that he's able to keep this pace up for that long. He's been insane, and if he gives the Ducks these types of performances on the majority of nights, they're going to be in every game and have the potential to win every game. So I think if you're looking for a positive note as a Ducks fan looking at this team trying to make the playoffs and wanting that to happen, John Gibson's play is the biggest positive thing that you can have going forward because he has been stellar for the Ducks so far this year.
Oh, I 100% agree. He's been so good, and the fact that he is this good means that no matter how poorly they play, or no matter how long it's taking them to figure things out, he's going to give them a chance. He's going to be a bridge to the point, where they can maybe start to have a more solidified structure. Outside of that, I think right now some positives to point out are that the veterans are picking up their game. And I mean, that makes a huge difference, right? Because if you're not getting production from those guys, you're pretty much screwed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no, I mean, all due respect to Nick Delorier, but if he's your leading scorer at times, it's not a winning formula. So that's encouraging for the Ducks, I think.
Yeah, 100% encouraging for the Ducks. So, question time?
Yeah, let's do some questions and then get on out of here.
So for those of you watching the video on YouTube, and for those of you, yes, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/crashspawn. Hit that subscribe button. Helps out the show a lot. Or watching or listening on your favorite podcast services. We do this live each and every time at 8 p.m. on Sundays at twitch.tv/crashthepond, where you can subscribe to the show. You can also follow the show. Following is completely free to you. It gives you a notification anytime we go live. Subscribing actually helps out the show a lot. With Amazon Prime, you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every time. You get special emotes in the chat, special badges next to your name. And want to give another shout out to our good friend George. This is formerly known FKA as GeorgieCon, now Shoegaze Dragon Georgie. Gifted out 5 more subs, or I think 6 more subs, for a total of 11 gifted subs on the night. So thank you so much to George for doing that. Our great friend Bonnie, Literate Gal, gave us 1,100 bits, and we also had Less Than 3-1 resub for 2 months. Nem4250 subscribed also, and then also George gave us 100 bits. So thank you so much for all the support.
Everybody.
This has been a good show, really a significant amount of viewers. So want to give a shout out to everyone out there for tuning in, and now you get to have your voices heard for being in the Twitch chat. So Caleb Halley said, question, is Bob Murray a good GM? Putting you on the spot here.
Why do you have to do that to me?
There was one before this, but I wanted to start with this one. This is too fun.
I think he's trending towards not that good.
Yes. And I would agree with that. Ginger Wolf asked, question, will we see Nick Delorier become a consistent point producer?
Probably not, but he's doing okay in his minutes. I mean, there is a process to his game. He has been getting chances. Like, he got another scoring chance again tonight that he could have scored on. So I don't think he's going to become this point getter, but I think you could see his production continue to kind of on this uptick, certainly.
Yes, I agree. He had chances tonight, and I think that even
he
though
gets a chance every game.
Yeah, and weirdly, I was trying to figure out, there was that one chance, and I was trying to figure out why he didn't have one shot attempt for that chance, and it's weird. It's not at 5-on-5, but it's there at EV. I don't really understand.
Was it 4-on-4?
It may have been 4-on-4 when that happened, or maybe on a penalty kill or power play. May
have been 4-on-4.
If it was EV, it wouldn't have been a power play or penalty kill. But regardless, it may have been 4-on-4. But still, weird times happening. But M. Young said, one problem that I still see with the power play is we haven't scored. Yes, we should note that. We haven't said that yet. The power play has not scored for the Ducks. They're the only team that has not scored a power play goal yet this season. Wants to know, who would you guys put out there for the first unit?
I think the unit they have going right now, I mean, before tonight, they were looking okay with Terry, Steele, Getzlaf, net front. I think it's Henrique with Fowler or Shattenkirk at the point. I think when they have Steele and Terry out there, people gave me crap yesterday because I said on Friday because I said Terry looks so good on the power play. I mean, he had one really nice setup to Ricard Raquel. I think if you have Terry, Raquel, Getzlaf out there, as much as Terry has been lackluster this year, I still think that he helps kind of just keep things moving. He's good at finding the seams, and that's important on the power play. He's also good at bringing it into the zone. So I think as long as you have Getzlaf, Raquel, Terry, you could substitute Terry for Steele, and Shattenkirk at the point. I think you're in okay shape.
Yeah, real quick, Halo Ducks chimes in with a very clutch thing about Nick Delorier. That chance came on a delayed penalty.
Oh, what a technicality!
Yes, so technically,
yeah.
So that may have been that may have been the Grant Line's one chance. Yeah, the one shot
of that stat. Yeah, we're just we're really trying to drive a narrative here, just ignoring the facts.
Yeah. So that guy Bobski said, question, who will be, and we should mention this week they're going to be playing at Arizona and then 2 games at home against St. Louis, but said, question, who will be the best player in the series versus Arizona?
Ooh, great question. I think Ricard Raquel is going to continue to shine. I really think that he looks reinvigorated. He's getting opportunities. Him and Getzlaf, they're finding each other. And not only that, I mean, Rickard Rakell, like I mentioned earlier, set up Hampus Lindholm against, was it Colorado or Minnesota? Whichever one. It's all blending together. But the point is, I think he looks good, and I think against a weaker team like Arizona, we're going to see him maybe score a couple goals. So be on the lookout for him.
I'm going to go with the easy answer and say John Gibson.
You have to pick a skater. Pick a skater.
A skater. I'll go with Ryan Getzlaf.
Okay.
Will the Ducks trade Adam Henrique from Nate?
Well, so actually what's interesting is that he was not part of the package for this trade because Columbus is on his no trade list. So unless maybe they asked him to waive it, who knows? But will they trade him this season? I would still say no. I think that he's one of the less tradable guys, but it's possible.
Yeah. I don't think he gets traded this season. I think he gets traded in the offseason, though. That's my bold prediction with that. That guy Bobsky asked, will Gibson win the Vezina?
He should. I mean, I haven't watched the other goalies, so I don't know, but he should get it because it's his turn. He's due.
We're doing that. We're going there with it.
Let's go Drew Doughty style. Just give it because he's due. But he actually deserves it. I mean, Drew Doughty didn't deserve his Norris.
Yeah.
But he would be a deserving candidate.
Lewis X209 with a really important question that I'm obligated to answer. What should he get at Del Taco in an hour?
He should get a water cup and then just keep driving through the drive-thru. Leave. Actually, no. I will say their chocolate chip cookies are weirdly good at Del Taco.
Del Taco's very, very good. Get their chicken soft tacos. Get some fries. Get a chicken or a cheese quesadilla. You know, you're good. You're good to go. Question from Shaken Wing. Sorry for the tangent there. Love Del Taco. Who realistically may get traded from this Ducks team? Do you think anyone gets moved off this roster this year?
I do think some of the veterans are on the clock. I mean, name a franchise that openly criticizes their veteran players as often as this franchise does.
We didn't mention that, but Eakins called them out.
Yeah. He said that they weren't happy about it, and they weren't good up to that point. He wasn't wrong to do that. Is that the way to go necessarily? Who knows? But the point is, they call them out a lot. They don't seem happy with their work at times. And if the Ducks are at a point where they're out of the playoffs or another opportunity comes up with a young player, who knows? Then, maybe once Patrick Laine gets sick of John Tortorella, then maybe that's when that happens. So I don't rule it out, no.
Yeah. Nateas, is Dallas Eakins a good coach? People are just putting you on the spot.
I mean, he's trending towards not that good right now. I mean, I was already on this kick last year about how, with the questionable late game decisions. And I just think tactically, in terms of his deployment of the lines, in terms of the way he's structured the power play, the decisions he's made in the beginning of the year, hasn't been a ton that you can point to with Eakins and say, there is your evidence that he's this great coach. Now, I will say, and I will give him credit, that he recognized his mistakes early on, or at least he saw the combinations weren't working and didn't wait that long to get things changed. So I do want to give him some credit there. Do I still think there's some holes in his style? Yes, but let's give him a little more time. You don't want to completely write him off yet.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to two more questions here. We got two more.
Nate just throwing in AHL coach. So there you go.
Just fire. Coming in with the fire. Two more questions. Let's go with this one from Uwe Mole. Said, question, is Rowney and Deloria the most dynamic fourth line in hockey? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. There are better fourth lines throughout the league. Would you like to add to that? Because I know where you're going to go with this, so I'm going to let you take the floor.
Well, dynamic. So dynamic would mean that they can do more than one thing. And I think that at best they do maybe one thing well, which is suppress shot quality. But they don't do anything else outside of that. So I'm going to go with no.
Yeah, I thought you were...
Although give them credit because I believe it was the last Minnesota game or the first Colorado game. Rowney had the assist.
Yeah, it was the last Minnesota game. Rowney had both assists.
give them credit for that. I mean, they've held up their end of the bargain.
I thought you were just gonna go all out homer and say it's Lehkonen, Evans, Byron.
Oh well, I mean, I didn't pick them specifically, but I'm just saying that the Ducks' fourth line is not the most dynamic line. Yeah, I mean, the Canadians are the deepest team in the NHL right now in terms of forwards.
That's where I thought you were going to go with it. All right.
No, so, I mean, they're going to win the North. They're probably going to end up in the Cup final.
All right.
So
M. Young asking, bold prediction right there, by the way. Bold prediction. M. Young asking, say Lindholm, Shattenkirk, Fowler, Hakanpää, and Larson Hutton are generally going to be the 5 for now. Who between this is assuming, and this is a key thing, that Hutton plays the left side because he may play the right. Who between Welinski, Mahura, and Big Booming Shot? Also, we haven't given a shout out to Big Booming Shot for getting in an AHL game. Your boy getting into an AHL game for preseason, still hasn't gotten in the NHL. Who has the most potential to crack the lineup in your opinion?
I mean, they randomly called up Mahura the other day, which was kind of a surprise because there wasn't this obvious reason for it, as far as I'm recollecting. You were the one that pointed out to me on Friday.
Yeah, they did. They called him up. Let me see if he's still up. I think he may have gotten sent down. Not positive.
Yeah. But so I mean, if he were available, he would be my pick because he's looked good every time he's played for the Ducks. Was that the question? Who would I pick?
Yeah, Josh Mahura is actually on the active roster. He's not even on the taxi squad right now. So he was. Josh Mahura was the scratch tonight, the healthy scratch.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would say Mahura because he gives them so much more when he has the puck. Now, we don't know yet about his defensive game quite as much, but, I mean, he's at least not just, it's like when Jacob Larson gets the puck and it's like a grenade on his stick. At least with Mahura, he can do something with it. So,
yep,
that would be my choice.
So, yeah, I think that's gonna do it for questions for the night. I think we may have gotten an email, but we'll save that for next week. Sorry, Ken, if that was you that sent that. We'll get to that next week. We're running a little bit long right now.
We are running long, and we're trying to keep it a little tighter, just a bit. I know that everybody loves 2 hours, but trying to trim that a little bit. So, is there anything else that you wanted to point out, Jake? I want to give you the floor before we start wrapping up here.
I feel like you're putting me on the spot for something very specific, and I don't know what it is. And that
actually, no. There is something you should point out that maybe you haven't already.
What?
Something that you're wearing right now.
Oh, well, yeah, that was going to be part of the plugs,
Get into it.
We have merch. You can find it at crashthepond.com/shop. And we have shirts and we have sweatshirts. And you can see here, I am currently rocking the eggplant logo black shirt. This is a large, and so it fits true to size. They are very nice. I am very, very actually happy. I was a little bit nervous with how the shirt quality is. I'm a little bit of a snob for how my shirts fit, how they feel. These are very top-notch quality. I'm very, very happy with it, and you can see the logos there. I'll stand up and turn around, do a little model for everyone. You can see the back also. It has the logo in big.
Oh, let's see this.
Oh, almost. There we go.
This is great.
Logo and big for everyone. So
this is great for the audio only people.
Sorry, audio only. I mean,
look at that. Looks great.
So came out great. Yours is sitting on a chair right by me right now, Felix.
Yeah, you're holding it hostage in Long Beach, forcing me to drive hours in the cold.
So go to crashthepond.com/shop. There are t-shirts. There's the orange logo on a couple different things. There is the sweatshirt. If there's any other type of merchandise that you would like, let us know. We can see if we can get it done, get it made, and get it up on the site. I know one of our Discord members wants decals. Sadly, the service that we're using does not have decals, so won't be there. Sorry about that. We'll see if we can find that in some other way, though. I'm working on it still.
Little testimonial going on here in our Twitch chat. Ginger Wolf saying, "Love mine, so comfy."
Also, he put it out on Twitter today, so if you want to go to his Twitter account and see it, he looking good in it.
Yeah, seriously.
And we also had Nick Pappas, good friend of the show, tweeted out. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, so I'm excited to get mine because, you could have just shipped it to me, but neither here nor there. I'll have to make the trek up to your area. I don't want to give away where you live. And I may already have.
You just said it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't care.
Okay. let's let's get the heck. Oh, people want hats. Nobody
That
wants duffel bags.
duffel bags would be nice. Hats. The only issue is there's some issues with the place that we're using for hats with the logo and things like that. So I'm working on hats. That may be have to be through something else, and maybe what we end up doing is we look at, because I love hats like the one I'm wearing now with kind of the patch. I'm gonna see if maybe we can get something made with it like that on it, and see if maybe we can include it as maybe like a Patreon perk or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. See if maybe that's how it works out.
Yep. So let's get out of here. But speaking of Patreon, if you are looking to support this show, I highly recommend that you check out our Patreon page. And I think that, so a couple things there. So you have two ways of supporting us. That's at patreon.com/crashthepond. So for $1 pledge a month, you get access to our Discord chat, patrons only, which, man, it is just the best. I mean,
it's my favorite. It's my favorite place to talk hockey. I say this every time now, but it's so true. I just hop in there, and it's just everyone's in there trying to have a good time. Some people are obviously going to be team tank. Some people want the team to win, but it's everyone just having a good time, making jokes, just enjoying the game, talking with people that are in similar mindset.
Yeah, it's a very wholesome place. You know, it's not like there's no trolling. It's not like Twitter where things can really, I mean, just divulge. I mean, devolve. So highly recommend that. That's for $1 a month. Now for $5 a month, you also get access to 2 bonus episodes. And so that's episodes where maybe we go more in depth on the team on particular topics there, or we go more league wide. We've done rankings in the past, ranking, who we think should win specific awards, or, we look at different things like that. If you enjoy the banter of the show a bit, you're kind of more into that aspect. There is a bit more of that on the bonus shows. It's a bit more unfiltered. We gave our last episode was our unfiltered Ducks season preview. So
it was.
I think that says it all.
It was the least polished episode I think we've ever done, but it was the most off the cuff. Really, how we felt, everything behind it that we've ever done. Also,
yeah, we kind of went off. There was a lot to talk about there. I think that's when they had just announced Trevor Zegras was getting sent down. So,
it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
That drew some ire. So that's at patreon.com/crashthepond. We are introducing a new perk, which I believe we're going to test run again this week.
Yes.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So do we want to decide right now? Tuesday or Thursday? Your pick.
Let's go Tuesday. So we're actually doing a companion, broadcast to, if you're watching the game, we're going to be streaming it as well. Not streaming the actual game, but streaming our commentary watch along style. So essentially, maybe if you're not quite as enjoying the play-by-play, or maybe you just want something different, you want to hear how we react during the game, see what we're looking for, we're actually going to be broadcasting that. So you can watch along with us. We sync up the time so that you know where we're at. And the first one that we did was a big success. Now, you do have to be a patron, but you can be a patron at any level, I believe, because this month is a bit more of a test run. And so we'll be providing the link in there for you to join and watch the game with us. It's a lot of fun.
Yep, it is. And I think we got some feedback. I'm going to incorporate some of it into what we have on the screen to make it a little bit easier to sync up with us. I think I'm going to have the score and game time up so you can at least sync up with kind of where we're at to make life a little bit easier. But yes, there will be an additional tier next month on Patreon for this. So if you've enjoyed this, we'll announce it probably a little bit more during the actual watch along. So if you want to tune in, get it just for your normal $1 or $5 tier. You can do that for this upcoming week on Tuesdays when we're going to do that. It is a live stream. The video also does stay up, so that link, even if you are not able to catch it live and you go back and watch the game at a later date, you can sync up with us and watch it then also with it.
I really do enjoy those. They're a lot of fun, and so I'm excited to keep that going.
And we also have another Patreon episode that will be coming this week. Got to get the second one in, Felix.
Oh, boy, it's going to be a week. It's going to be a week, but it's going to be fun. Okay, a few more ways that you can support us here. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Just search for Crash the Pond, or you can even search for Anaheim Ducks, and we'll pop up there. If you want to go further, make sure you subscribe, and you can also leave us some feedback. So you can hit the stars and leave a review. It just takes a couple minutes, but it honestly goes such a long way. We really appreciate hearing from you guys, and we actually got a new review last week that just went up right after we recorded. So I do want to give a shout out here to Sean Salisbury, who left us a review with the title, 5-star review, by the way, not a big deal, balanced and precise. Listener since the 17-18 season, which, by the way, huge shout out.
Was that our first season?
That was our first season. And man, that season compared to now, if you look at just like the tech, the way we do it, things have evolved a bit.
We both have actual microphones instead of using, I think I had Skull Candy earbuds that had a microphone, Skull Candy earbuds as what I was recording on. And the Mixler days. Good times.
Oh, yeah.
Good times.
Yeah, but that's where it all started. We were going every game, just putting in the hours. But so anyway, to finish up the review, these guys know their stuff and always give an accurate picture on Ducks hockey, most detailed Ducks analysis in existence. Cheers. Oh my God. That is just, man, that's a big honor to hear that, because that's what we try to do, right? Give you the most accurate picture possible, include all the possible, views, our view, what the coaches may be thinking, and the organization's thinking, players. So appreciate that big time. But of course, if you are not on Apple Podcasts, make sure to check us out on Spotify. We are on there. We're on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. We are on YouTube, as Jake already mentioned. So that's youtube.com/crashthepond. Jake posts the video version of the pod there after we record every Sunday night, Monday morning. Subscribe there and turn on your notifications so that you know when our shows go up. Big shout out to everybody there who's been leaving comments. And then just a couple more things here. Check the website out, crashthepond.com. That's at crashthepond on Twitter and on Facebook. Check Jake out on Twitter at reindeergames91. I am on Twitter as well at Felix_Sicard. That's going to do it here, Jake.
Couple more things to plug real quick. Weekly ratings coming out tomorrow, like I said. So keep an eye on crashthepond.com. They'll be going up tomorrow. I think like at 6 or 7 a.m. is when I'll schedule it for. One other thing, obviously, you're over at the fourth period, putting your articles out over there also. And I've started a new little show with in our Twitch as the Frostback with Tyler Tennell, doing some DFS talk on Saturdays. I think 1 p.m. is what we're looking at right now.
Hey,
at Fantasy Focused.
It was great.
I
highly recommend it.
Thank
you.
If
you want to win money.
Yeah, exactly.
Get the money.
Exactly. So good times. So go check that out.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks everybody for listening this week. Hope everybody's season with the Ducks is as enjoyable as possible, and we will talk to you at the next show. Have a great week.
Bye.